Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Modern Warfare 3 complete optimization guide. In this guide, we're going to get your 1650 or whatever GPU you have to at least run the game so you can at least somewhat play it. Now, if you have high top end specs, obviously you just need to have the right settings in game and you'll get the best FPS. If you're still not getting that on the top end specs, I'm talking at least a 4070 Ti for your GPU and maybe a 8-core CPU like a 5800 X3D, a 7800 X3D, or an i9 or i7. If you're not getting good frame rates on those specs after this video, head over to my website, honestly book a PC optimization. Lots of people have been booking optimizations for Modern Warfare 3. We've been seeing really good results with that. So if you want to be one of those people, head over to that link and book one. But we're going to get right into basically what stuff you need to avoid in Windows that will lower your FPS in Modern Warfare 3 and the best configuration file for Modern Warfare 3 and what settings you can turn up that will enhance the quality of your gameplay and what settings you should just turn down because they make no difference on the quality of your gameplay. But without further ado, let's get right into the best configuration file for Modern Warfare 3. Alright, so right before we jump into the actual configuration files and the in-game settings, we're going to go into the battle.net launcher and you're going to click battle.net at the very top left, click settings, and then on game launch, just set this to exit battle.net completely. We don't want this running in the background while we're playing COD. And then scroll down and uncheck browser hardware acceleration and restart later and then press done. And that's going to be like the launcher settings. Now head over to the link in description and there's going to be a COD configuration files that we're going to download. Alright, so before we actually get into the configuration file and start importing it, we're going to go back to the battle.net launcher, click the gear icon right next to the word play, click modify install, and then click modify install right here. You're going to uncheck everything that you don't play in here and just keep the main stuff that you play checked in here. So for example, it might be MW3 multiplayer, MW2 multiplayer, and Warzone. You might have all three of these checked, or just MW3 multiplayer and Warzone, and that's it. Just do it like that. We don't want like campaign. If you're not going to play campaign, just uncheck it. It's just taking up extra space. Alright, so you're going to extract the file that we downloaded from the link in the description, and once you have extracted it, all you're going to do is going to open it up and it's going to be these 3 folders and 2 links. So the first thing is we're going to ignore the last 3 files or folders and we're just going to go to the config file. And this is really important. These are going to be the best competitive COD settings before you change them to your liking. Alright, this is just a basic configuration file. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to go over that you could turn on in game that depends on your situation and depends on your PC specs. So for now, all you're going to do is just right click on this, click copy, go to this PC, go to documents, go to Call of Duty players. All you're gonna do is right click on here, click paste, and click replace the file in the destination. All right, now we're gonna change something called render worker count. The gist of it is you're gonna open up your task manager, go to performance tab, go to CPU, and I have a 6-core CPU, as you can tell, cores 6. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna subtract 1, and that number I'm gonna place it in this notepad. So we're gonna open it up with notepad and find render worker count. I'm gonna change this from 7 to 5 and then press save, and that's going to be the render worker count for my CPU. Now it gets a little bit tricky depending on what CPU you have and if you have E cores or not. So if you have efficiency cores, you want to subtract those out of the core count that you see in task manager. So if you have an i9 or i7 of the recent generations of Intel, you're going to put in 8 and you're going to subtract 1. That's going to be 7. So 7 is going to be the best value for Intel i7s and i9s. i5 is just going to do 5 or 6. You're going to have to test around with this. It really depends on your CPU. But for me, just do your core count subtracted by 1. If you have E cores, subtract those as well. Now, if you want a Ryzen 9, you're going to divide your cores in here by 2, and you're going to subtract that result by 1 and put it in the render worker count. So let's just say you have a 7950 X3D. For that CPU, the first 8 cores actually have the cache cores, which are going to be the cores that are used for gaming, that are going to give you the more performance. So you want those set to the render worker count, and you're just going to type 7 in here if you're on a Ryzen 9 7950 X3D. Same thing if you're on a 5950X, or if you're on a 5900X, you're just going to put 6 or 5. You have to test around. You can run the benchmark and figure out which value works best for you, either your core count, but generally most of the time you can just do your core count subtracted by 1 and that should be the best result. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's pretty much all we're going to change specifically in here that is regarding the configuration file. We're going to leave the stuff that we could re-enable in the settings specific to your specs for last. Now I'm going to go back to the downloads folder and find this pack that we just downloaded from my description. You're going to go to NVIDIA settings, and if you're on AMD, go to AMD settings. But before we do any of that, you want to make sure you're using the latest drivers for both of your cards if you're on NVIDIA or if you're on AMD. So NVIDIA, you obviously want to use the latest drivers for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 just because it is a new game and there's going to be optimizations coming out for that game in the newer drivers. And I've been saying this in multiple videos, always use the latest drivers. However, this does not mean you should always update them. Just for this instance, since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is a new game, just update to the latest and call it a day. Now, do the same thing for AMD, but for AMD Radeon, just download the recommended drivers. I know there's going to be some optional driver out there that has more features or whatever. Generally, those drivers are very buggy, so that's why I just don't recommend the optional drivers. But other than that, you're just going to go to whichever one applies to you. So for me, and for most of you, you're going to be on NVIDIA. You're going to go to NVIDIA and you're going to open up NVIDIA Profile Inspector. And I have a profile made for you guys, so all you have to do is just drag this little file right here, the MW3-zilly-nvidia.nip into NVIDIA Profile Inspector, and it will tell you profile successfully imported. And what this basically means is that we just applied the best settings for your NVIDIA control panel without having to go through all the manual work. So I just did all that for you. So you're going to click apply changes on the top right, and those settings should be applied. Just go back to your NVIDIA control panel and you're going to go to adjust image settings with preview. Make sure you have that, use the advanced 3D image settings selected. Do not have any of these two selected, just the one in the middle, and go to manage 3D settings and just make sure it looks similar to mine. Obviously your GPU is going to be different, but just make sure it looks similar, and that means the settings have been applied. Now do the same thing for your Radeon control panel. Here's some pictures on how you can configure those. It's pretty simple for that. You don't have to do that much. If you want to go more in depth, you can watch my AMD full optimization guide on my YouTube channel. That one I go very in depth on how you can optimize your AMD card and unlock more performance out of it, and just some issues with AMD cards regarding temperatures and fan curves. But other than that, that's going to be it for the configuration file importing and the graphics drivers and graphics driver settings. Now I'm going to boot up the game and we're going to actually configure some special settings in the game depending on your specs. I'm going to explain them a little bit. So whenever you try to relaunch the game, it will tell you, do you want to boot up the game in safe mode? Just press no on that. It's only saying that just because we changed the configuration file completely, and just ignore that and press no. So once you're in the settings, you might have to wait for your shaders preloading to finally finish, and just gotta make sure that finishes just so you don't have any performance loss in game. And another keyword for shader preloading is shader cache. This is like a common thing with most games out there. You have to wait for the graphics driver to load up the shaders, but we can let that do its thing. For now, we're just gonna go to the gear icon and go to graphics, and before we do anything, we're gonna go to account and network on the left and scroll all the way down and find dismemberment and gore effects. We're gonna turn this off, and it's not gonna help a lot of you on top end GPUs, but for people on the lower end GPUs, this is gonna help just because we're turning off extra visual features that are useless. So turn this to off, and then we're gonna go to graphics and make sure you run in full screen exclusive for display mode, and make sure you are on the high screen refresh rate. Display resolution, this obviously depends on what monitor you have. 1440p, you're gonna get less frames. 4K, you're gonna get less frames as you go higher. So scroll down, NVIDIA reflex low latency. For me, I'm just gonna leave it on plus boost. It's pretty much minimal differences between the two, almost both the same. Just keep it on or on plus boost. And VSync, obviously turn these off. Custom frame rate limit, set this to unlimited unless you know for a fact you're able to contain a multiple of your refresh rate stable. So if I was able to get 144 FPS in this game, I would cap 144 just because I feel like that would be a lot smoother, a lot more consistent. But honestly, in this game, it seems like unlimited is just going to be the best choice. So we're going to go back to quality, and all this should already be done for you. One thing that I'm going to point out is variable rate shading. If you're on a bad GPU, turn this on. You're going to get an extra like 50 FPS boost just from this setting alone, just because what this setting does is stuff in your peripheral vision. So like, let's just say you're looking at a building, anything to the sides of it, like the grass or whatever, that is very close to your in-game character, it's going to be a little bit blurry compared to having this off. And basically it's just not rendering it as much, it's just rendering it it at a low texture quality, and it's just gonna give you more FPS. So highly recommend turning this on. And upscaling and sharpening, set this to Fidelity FX CAS and just turn it all the way up if you want the game to look 100% clear. But this is gonna use some performance, so if you have a bad GPU, just leave this on off. Otherwise, just use it, but like slowly turn it up. Fidelity CAS, just turn it up, turn it down, depending on your GPU. I'm gonna leave it off personally. Now, dynamic resolution, this is also kind of like variable rate shading, but what this is doing is it's changing the render resolution dynamically while you're playing in order to reach a certain frame rate. If you have a bad GPU, again, turn this on, but for most of you, you probably wouldn't like having this on. Now scroll down, and texture, filter, and anisotropic, you might want to consider setting this to high if you have a good GPU. Same thing with texture resolution. These two settings, they are going to help the game look a little bit more clear, and if you're going for that competitive level gameplay and you have a decent card that can run it, then highly recommend just set these both to high. But if you're just chasing the most frame rate possible, just set everything else to low or very low. Now I'm going to scroll down and find on-demand texture streaming. Turn this off, and that's for everyone. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, and everything should look relatively the same as mine. And realistically, the only settings that you should consider turning on are variable rate shading, Fidelity FX CAS, texture resolution, turn that up to high, and texture filter anisotropic, turn that to high. And this really depends on your graphics card. As I keep mentioning, this game is very GPU intensive and CPU intensive, so you need to have a good balance of both. And if your PC just can't handle it, I guess it's time to upgrade. It is what it is. You'll only do so much on your computer to get it working as good as possible. Other than that, that should be pretty much it for the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 configuration files and settings. Just make sure you apply your settings that you changed, and it might ask you to restart. Just press confirm and you could restart your game. Other than that, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you want a full PC optimization service, if you're still not getting the frames that you should be getting in this game, go to the link in the description. I've worked with top end players like Booga, Bizzle, and many more, so you could look at my vouchers all over Twitter, or X as now they call it. But that's going to be pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.